What's up? Welcome into this Monday afternoon edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Matt Ryan joins the show as he does every single Monday afternoon, and we're going to break down Sunday Night Football a little bit because it was kind of a snoozer last night. But we want to know, in the Green Bay Packers 30-13 victory, is this better news for the Packers or worse news for the Seattle Seahawks here, Matt?
I think it's probably worse news for the Seattle Seahawks. Depending on what Geno's health is, I think we were even saying it maybe a week or two ago. I feel like the Rams are primed to win the division, and I think they're playing the best football in the NFC West last night. And I feel like we knew it was going to be a hard stretch. I think Seattle has Minnesota next week, and so. They had this back-to-back stretch of NFC North and, hoping that you could pick off one. We'll see what happens. It's going to be really hard if Geno's not available to go. But I still think it's probably worse news for the Seahawks. I thought they needed one last night.
I tend to agree that, especially when your quarterback goes out and Geno Smith, and now it didn't look like anything serious, ankle, but obviously serious enough to keep him out and put Sam Howell in. But I think the injury was more a microcosm of the issue that is this offensive line's a disaster. And especially when you lose your center, Oluwatimi, early on in that game, having to go to a backup, and now you're just on, UDFA's rookie sixth rounders. It's just like a disaster in terms of expecting those guys to hold up on a week in and week out basis. And you have this first year offensive coordinator who seemingly can't figure out a way to protect this offensive line. Kyle, what did you see from that O-line, and how worried should Geno Smith and his health be even when he does come back?
Well, it's not a schematic issue. I just think, to your point, you've got guys out there that are just outmatched. And when that's the case, particularly when you get to your second quarterback, it compounds on itself and never ends up looking good. And conversely, with the Packers able to move the ball up and down the field, they got into a style of game that is not conducive to having these guys that are less than in the game for the Seattle Seahawks. And Matt, I think you're absolutely right. I expected the Packers to handle business. Nobody would have expected Geno Smith to get injured. It's obviously worse news for the Seattle Seahawks.
I do think for the Packers, from their perspective, this was a game that just like they've won all year. They've only lost to the best teams in the NFL. They've only lost to the Lions, to the Vikings, to the Eagles. They beat everyone else. So until they pass that test, which is beating one of those teams atop the NFC, I don't think we're going to really learn anything about the Green Bay Packers until playoff time. What we did see, though,
I don't think anybody wants to see him, though. You know what I mean? Because no. I think they turn the football over on the defensive side of the ball. They run the ball very well. And if Jordan Love gets hot, he's like the streaky kind of player that could have a Joe Flacco type of postseason or an Eli Manning type of postseason where they just go on this heater, right? And the team around them is built to win. I'm intrigued by the Packers right now.
What have you seen from Love
Matt,
specifically?
Matt, we've seen Jordan Love have these heaters you're talking about, and it's scary. As a Bears fan, I hate to talk about this, yes, but Jordan Love can quickly become the most dangerous guy in the stadium at the drop of a hat, particularly in these gotta-have-it situations. Add to the fact that they added Josh Jacobs to this offensive attack, and the way that Matt LaFleur is able to scheme up some of these runs, these counter orbits. There's so many things to look at for the second level of the defense. Josh Jacobs, patient runner. It all plays into Jordan Love having an opportunity to have an easy go at it at the quarterback position. But go on, Matt. I'm sorry to cut you off.
He's going to make big plays, right? Like this is what he does. He scrambles. He's got good mobility. He's got a really powerful, strong arm, and he's not scared to throw it. It comes down to the no turnovers. And that graphic, right, the 0 turnovers, 7 touchdown passes that he's had in the last 4 games. I mean, to me, if he kind of can keep that going, the big plays are going to be there. That's just kind of the nature of the skill positions that he has, the style that he plays. If you can limit some of those turnovers, it could be a scary group. And Matt LaFleur, I feel like doesn't get enough credit for his playoff pedigree as well, right? Like he hasn't been to to the Super Bowl yet, but they've consistently been successful in the postseason. So you got a quarterback who can get hot. You got a coach who's comfortable coaching in those type of situations, and a really good team around them.
If I were to kind of distill the type of quarterback that has gone on those runs historically throughout the postseason into the Super Bowl, it's guys who, one, don't take a lot of sacks, two, are aggressive down the football field. And so with that combination, you're not taking consistently negative plays. And if you can catch the games where they're not creating turnovers, right, where they're not throwing it to the other team, and some of those deep balls, jump balls, as we saw last night, you get like 3 long PIs, and you move the football down the field. You don't necessarily even need to complete them. So if you catch that lightning in a bottle where those big plays are hitting, all of a sudden you're a team that can beat anyone else in the NFL.
And he's done it, right?
Yeah.
Like all you need is a 4-game sample size. That's it. You need a 4-game heater.
So we shall see. I agree, though. I think this NFC is, to me, the more exciting side come playoff time because the wild cards are so good. You're going to have a wild card team, whether it's the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, that can legitimately run the table through it. So there's going to be no layups, even for the best teams in that conference. From the flip side here, though, we talked about the Seahawks a little bit and the Geno Smith injury. Are we really pushing the panic button on them going forward? Because I think the Vikings game, everyone always chalked up as probably unlikely to win that one when predicting down the stretch. So they still do have some semblance of control here because they have the Rams on their schedule in that what we've called the de facto Week 18 championship, NFC West championship game. Do they have any chance, though, if Geno is hampered by this injury? Like if he's truly not mobile enough to create behind this offensive line?
I mean, I don't think so. I think Sam Howell, did some good things when he was in Washington, but was prone to turnovers, prone to taking sacks, prone to those things that you just talked about on the other side that kind of derail you when you're playing playoff type teams. And they've got Minnesota, they've got LA in 2 weeks, right? So I think it'd be really, really difficult for them to overcome that, given, like you said, too, the state of where their offensive line is at. And it's one thing to come in as a backup, and you're getting protected and you're running the football. They don't run it all that great either. Yeah. They get some big runs with Charbonnet, but they don't run it consistently. And so I think it'd be increasingly difficult I think it's going to be hard for them regardless if Geno's good. I think it'd be increasingly difficult for them if Sam has to go in.
If Sam Howell goes out there and somehow before the game, if Geno's not able to go, if Sam Howell gets hit with the Men in Black laser and he forgets anything he's been told about turning the football over, and he turns into that aggressive, give your guys shots down the field, we don't even have to catch it type quarterback so we can get a couple of these PIs, they could be a sneaky team. But if Sam Howell looks like the guy that we saw last night, who is taking sacks, and he's behind that porous offensive line, I think the Seahawks are, in a nosedive towards the earth at this point. And it's unfortunate to see because Geno has been so tough and played well in big spots. This defense has come around, and it's just not enough right now.
Yeah, I think you really saw last night how much he's kind of elevated that offense behind that offensive line. But unfortunately, not only with this weekend's game, but then they play on Thursday night. So it's a short turnaround after that injury, 2 games in the next 10 days. Yeah, I'm worried about Seattle Seahawks going forward. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to Matt Ryan's quarterback observations from certain QBs around the NFL. Right after this. No team was in the headlines more this past week than the Philadelphia Eagles. Quarterback Jalen Hurts, wide receiver A.J. Brown. Are they friends anymore? Who knows at this point? All we know is that Jalen Hurts came out, went 25 of 32, 290 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown as the Eagles housed the Pittsburgh Steelers 27-13. Finished that game with one of the best drives in NFL history. Held the ball for over 10 minutes to run the clock out at the end. Are we buying this turnaround from the passing game in Philly, Matt?
I think yes. To me, they just, it's been weird because they've run the football so well and they've played such good defense that they just really haven't had a game like that where they came out and were committed to throwing the football like they did yesterday in what seems like a month or two, right? And so I think given the guys are healthy, AJ, played really well. Devontae Smith out there is huge for them. I do buy it because I think they're going to be thrown against favorable passing looks because their run game is so dynamic. And I think they're built in such a way that you just have to be like middle of the pack in terms of passing in what you can do given what the rest of your team is. And that's fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Like, I think they're built to beat you running the football playing defense. But if you're just going to load it up and put one-on-ones, which I think Jalen Hurts did a great job of yesterday, kind of recognizing one-on-ones and taking advantage of that, I think it is good enough. And I think given what the Lions are doing and all the injuries that they have on defense, and maybe some of the question marks we have of some of these other NFC teams, you know, I'd like to think they're in the driver's seat right now. And I think the passing game, if it's like it was yesterday, I think is clearly good enough given the rest of what their football team is.
Yeah, Matt, as you and I both know, and Mike does as well, if you can run the football, there's no reason that you should get away from running the football, because it's not like you get style points in the National Football League for wins. And when you got Saquon Barkley, you've got this offensive line, you have an identity, and teams search far and wide for an identity and a culture. And for offensive linemen, this is like watching your favorite movie every week. You get an opportunity to watch Saquon Barkley run the ball behind that group. Questions arise in the media about A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, and all of a sudden they want to flex their passing muscles. Well, we know Jalen Hurts can do it. We know he can throw the football, but we haven't seen them rely upon the passing game. It just shows they have more teeth than just the running game in that offensive huddle. And I think that the luxury that the Philadelphia Eagles have is, to your point, you look for the matchup, and we'll take advantage of the matchup, because we got guys on both sides of the football field who can be legitimate threats for the secondary against these groups.
I have a take that I want your guys' opinion on. It may be a little counterintuitive, but there was no Dallas Goedert. Obviously, he went on IR before a couple weeks ago. But I think that him being out might actually be beneficial to this passing game, because it basically takes Jalen Hurts' eyes off the middle of the football field, where he doesn't want to throw anyways. He's never been a good thrower purely over the middle of the football field. He likes to attack outside the numbers. And in this game, 23 targets to Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, 23 of his 32. He's basically just looking at those two guys now, just looking at the outside, the numbers sort of routes. And the Steelers made it a little bit easy on them, in my opinion, and giving them one-on-ones a good portion of the time. But I think that's actually beneficial, because those guys, if one of them has a one-on-one, one of them's winning, right? Like, you don't have to have a third option in this offense when you have those two.
Well, I'm never a big believer in taking good football players off the field and being better. So I want options out there, man, just in case, just in case that one time you need it down the middle, you got your guy. But I understand what you're saying. It's like there's only one football, right? Yes. And this is the issue with the Eagles offense. There's only one ball. And Saquon Barkley is going to be the guy who touches it the most. And he should be. He's incredibly dynamic. Whether that's running the football, whether it's getting it out of your hand to him in the passing game, he's the focal point of what you're doing. And so when you have two guys on the outside like they do, that are true outside receivers too, and play to what Jalen does best, I understand what you're saying. I think that can be, you can do that through play calling too, right? Like, even so when Goddard is there, you can tailor that through play calling to run your offense that way. But I agree with you. I think they're best when they're running the football, throwing the ball to Saquon Barkley, and then taking advantage of the outside parts of the field.
Matt, when we get these play calls in the huddle, it could be ride 35, Bob, kill. We're going to run, 39 or 38. So it's either a left run or a right run, depending on whether they line up in a 3 or a shade on the left side. And it makes it really simple. And for a stupid guy like myself, keeping it simple is great. So I feel like, to Mike's point, it allows Jalen to have that simplicity of saying, what's the look on the left side? What's the look on the right side? Okay, we're going to roll, because I have faith in my guys. And that's what they have. They have dudes on the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball. And when you're inundated with all these options, sometimes your paralysis by analysis kicks in. And I feel like this is a group where you can't allow that to happen, because they're so damn talented. Let's run it. Let's dare them to stop us.
I've said this always, and I would say it to the players that I played with all the time. Like, I don't care what you know. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care that you can answer the questions correctly in the meeting room. I care what you do, right? And so you don't have to make it all that complicated. When you got really good players, let them go play. And I think the Eagles have done a really good job of that They did a great job of that Sunday. I think they've done a good job of that the entire year, right? They won 10 ball games in a row. You're doing a lot of really good things, and you're doing it running the football. Keep it simple.
Someone who
I have
hasn't
a gripe.
been doing it.
I have a gripe, Mike. I have a real bad gripe about this. I want to bring it up with the quarterback here. Okay, Saquon Barkley, 14 rush, or Jalen Hurts, 14 rushing touchdowns on the season. You know how many times this guy Saquon Barkley's taken the ball and he could sniff the end zone, and then they just let Jalen Hurts go in? I don't know. As an O-lineman, I love touchdowns, but at the end of the day, this running back Saquon Barkley, he gets you down there into that prime oceanfront real estate. Let's let him jump in the ocean every once in a while, guys. You know what I'm saying?
An O-line talking about stat chasing? I thought I'd seen it all.
So my rookie year, we had a running back, Michael Turner. Awesome player, right? Unbelievable player. But in 2008, he had this ridiculous number of touchdowns that he scored. And we must have had 10 or 12 passes caught, tackled at the one. And so we used to watch, like, as a team, you know, Mike Smith would have all these cut-ups of these plays, good and bad or whatever. And so every time he'd show one where one of our receivers caught it at the one, Mike T would be sitting in the corner of the meeting room just like, thank you. And then he would score on the next play, man. He had a bunch of those touchdowns. It's just how it goes sometimes.
Dude had an elite running back physique. He was just filled out that jersey. I mean, he was built in the lab to play goal line running back. All right, let's move from a quarterback who had a great day to one who had, well, maybe one of the worst days you'll ever see. Will Levis, 8 of 12, 89 passing yards, 3 picks, and a fumble before he was unceremoniously benched for the Tennessee Titans while facing, mind you, one of the worst defenses in the NFL in the Cincinnati Bengals. After, I feel like, a tumultuous month or so where he had a shoulder injury, but then he played well, but then he didn't really play well, and the bottom really fell out this week. Is the Will Levis experiment officially done in Tennessee, Matt?
I mean, it's hard to come back from. You know, I know the shoulder injury was there, but it wasn't. I mean, I don't know if it was clear that they weren't going to make a move at that time anyhow, right? To Mason Rudolph. And then, you know, for a second time to be going back to the bench. I think it's probably, you know, in the coach's mind, in Brian Callahan's mind, in the GM's mind, I think they're looking for something different. And it's been the turnovers, right? I mean, this has been the story that just doesn't go away for Will Levis, is an inability to take care of the football. And eventually, you know, that's the number one metric for wins and losses, right? The number one stat that affects everything is turnover margin. And when you're not taking care of it, and in the way that they're doing it too, right? Like it's sometimes it's not just the turnovers, it's like how they come up. To me, I think they're moving on. I think they're moving in a different direction moving forward.
I will say it's his inability to not avoid sacks. That's the thing that's just like, I don't think you ever fix that. He's so bad at it. And yeah, the offensive line's not good, but he's taking a sack once every 8.5 dropbacks this season. That's just untenable. That's higher than Caleb Williams, who leads the league in sacks, highest rate in the NFL. You compare that to someone like Josh Allen, who takes one every 40 dropbacks. So like one, not even every game at the rate he's been playing. And it's like they're playing a different sport. You just can't run an effective offense when that's going to be the case.
I'll say this. I think of quarterbacks, right, that have been drafted in the last handful of years, and I think everyone is looking for kind of one of three molds, right? They're looking for, you know, a Patrick Mahomes type, which would be the Caleb Williams draft pick in Chicago. They're looking for the Lamar Jackson type, which might be the Jaden Daniels pick in Washington, or they're looking for that Josh Allen mold, right? And I think Will Levis fits into that bigger, stronger, good runner, all of this. Mm-hmm. But make no mistake about it, Josh Allen is a passer, right? Like, he is a passer of the football that can do all of these other things. It's still a league that is about passing and layering the football and throwing with touch and throwing with timing and feel, throwing different pitches, right? It's not fastball, late run. You've got to be a passer to be able to do these things. And all the rest of the stuff on top of that is what's going to separate you and make you an X factor like Josh Allen. But it starts with being able to throw the football. And I think that sometimes is missed when we evaluate quarterbacks.
Yeah, Levis, I mean, he has never thrown with touch, even dating back to his career at Kentucky. But speaking of Josh Allen, I don't think any surprise here, but wanted to get to it here at the end. Who, Matt Ryan, is your quarterback of the week for Week 15?
I mean, got to go with Josh. I mean, unbelievable performance yesterday. Just what he's doing. We did the show from the pregame show from outside the stadium, but right before the half, we went in to do the halftime update on the field, and I got to see that 50-yard ball that he threw that they ended up missing the field goal after. But that watching the pacing on that throw live, it was unbelievable, man. His arm strength down the field, and we talked about it last week. You know, what's the advantage of having one of these really strong arms? Well, it's the ability to access all parts of the field. That throw was incredible, but just he looks so calm, right? And you mentioned it, just, you know, the poise that he has. He's not taking sacks. There's not negative plays. He's not turning the football over, but the ceiling is unbelievable right now. The big plays, the scramble he had on third down where he finds it back, throws it across the field. It's just like, it just looks easy for him right now. And, it's been incredibly impressive what he's done the last 3 weeks. It's been impressive the entire year, but the last 3 weeks have been on another level. And he has separated himself. I think the MVP discussion is over, even with how great Lamar was yesterday, too, and how great Saquon's been. I don't think anybody's put their team on their back more than Josh Allen has. It's been impressive.
All right, there you have it. Matt Ryan's quarterback of the week. No surprise there. Thanks so much for joining us, Matt, as he does every single Monday afternoon. We'll be coming back from a break with Jonathan Jones joining the program to break down some of the biggest news and storylines from Week 15. Jonathan Jones joins the program to discuss some of the biggest news from Week 15, and not a lot of news bigger than what the heck is going on with the Detroit Lions, because the hits keep coming. We have a graphic here that we're going to show up on the screen that has a number of their injuries, but doesn't even include all of them. Because, as you see here, David Montgomery, MCL, Carlton Davis, broken jaw, Aleem McNeil, just yesterday with the torn ACL. Those were all just yesterday. Then Derek Barnes, Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Anzalone, Malcolm Rodriguez. Doesn't even have Marcus Davenport on there because it was so long ago. And hasn't come back, will not be back this season. This is, at some point, not the Lions anymore. Have we reached that point, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's like the ship of Theseus, right? Like, how many wooden planks on this ship reference. Do you replace before it ceases to be the ship of Theseus? Yeah. And I think, look, they have made it through with all of these injuries up to this point and made it a one-score game against a team that I think a lot of folks would say and argue is the best team in football. And the Buffalo Bills may even be your Super Bowl favorite and certainly the MVP frontrunner at quarterback. But the attrition continues, and as the season goes on, you know, something that we don't ever really talk about when we get to the Super Bowl, when we get to the title games, it's always about, oh, these are the best teams in the NFL. Well, interestingly enough, a lot of times it was the healthiest team in football who winds up making it to the Super Bowl. Look at the LA Rams when they were making their run. They were always the healthiest team in football, right? And yeah, you can have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and that's going to be the great equalizer and the ultimate equalizer, but you have to have health on your side. Every single time the San Francisco 49ers have competed for a world championship, they've been healthy. And when they aren't healthy, they don't, and they don't even come close, right? And so that is what we're starting to see with the Detroit Lions, and I don't think it can hold up just because historically and recently in the NFL history, it does not hold up. I think it's too arduous a task for defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. And then you're going to say, at least the offense is there. At least the offensive line hasn't gotten banged up. At least they still have Jared Goff. And that's fine. But we just saw him pass for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns and no interceptions, and they still did not get the win. There's only so many fourth downs that you can go for. There's only so many times you can try an onside kick with a 6.5% recovery rate and not get it, which was a mind-blowing thing to do in that moment. You have to legitimately wonder if they can sort of hold up this duct tape team into late January or early February.
Scotch tape, not duct tape. I feel like duct tape is probably stronger material than Scotch tape at this point, Jonathan Jones.
It really has been. And I do just think that as much as this offense can win you games, it's like they do not have just some of the names of some of the players that they're forced to play at this point. They're not guys you want on an NFL football field, and that's how you give up 48 points in an NFL game. All right, let's go to another.
And Mike, here's the other thing. Like, before we move on, like, there's really no way for them to acquire other talent, right? Yes. We're past the trade deadline. The guys who are out there on the street, they're out on the street for a reason. They've been eating good in the holiday season, and, they're not up to speed in your system. So they're going to go out there, yeah, right? Like, they're going to go out there and they're going to sign some guys this week because they literally have to sign bodies. And they're going to need 3 weeks to ramp them up before they're actually playing football, or else you're going to see them at the game after they play. They're going to be on the injury report, DNP hamstring, just like we saw with DJ Humphries in the Kansas City Chiefs last week.
Yeah, you almost want your injuries like as early in the season as possible, survive them, and then get healthy all come playoff time. I always go back to the Bucs when Vita Vea had like a broken ankle, was out like most of the year. Comes back for the stretch run and like was almost better because at 375 pounds, those guys wear down, but he was fresh. So like, unfortunately with the timing of these, I do agree that if you're down Carlton Davis, Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson for a playoff game, you are no longer the Detroit Lions defense. You're a shell. You're probably your three most impactful players. You just can't overcome that at some point. All right, let's move to a team that's going to be searching for a head coach and a GM this offseason. The New York Jets. What's the latest on their search for both those positions and how Woody Johnson, the owner, will be factoring in?
Yeah, so they're going to get those searches really started up this week. They're going to start up interviews with candidates. We were able to report former Titans general manager John Robinson. He's going to be interviewed. I know ESPN reported that Louis Riddick, ESPN employee, is going to be interviewed. There are some other names who are out there that we need to double and triple source before getting those confirmed. But the Jets are going to be starting those interviews with GMs and coaches who are not currently employed by other clubs. That's per NFL rules. I certainly believe that there are going to be a number of names that we all know who will be interviewed at the end of the season when the NFL rules allow it. Do I believe that they're going to interview a Brian Flores, a Mike Vrabel, a Matt Nagy at head coach? I do. Do I think they're going to interview an Ian Cunningham and a Mike Borgonzi at GM? I also do there, but they can't until their team's seasons, regular seasons are done, or at least until they get into the playoffs. So the Jets right now, this is going to be the first search that Woody Johnson has done since 2015, because when they went out and got Robert Saleh and got Joe Douglas, he was across the pond serving as the ambassador to the United Kingdom. Well, he's not going to be serving that post in this Donald Trump administration. And in fact, it doesn't seem like he's going to be serving any post in this administration. And so that means that Woody Johnson, who is considered to be one of the most meddlesome owners in the NFL, is going to be there any day that he wants to be, and not separated from an Atlantic Ocean away from those who are running his football program. That's something really important for potential candidates. They're all going to want to know, who's my boss and how often is he around? And he is going to be around a whole lot. And the last point that I would say, because the Jets know this, they're going to want someone who can speak to Woody Johnson, who is going to be able to manage up, if you will. And so they're not, I don't think, going to go after a first-time GM with really no experience with meddlesome owners. They're going to want someone who has some pelts on the wall, if you will, Kyle.
JJ, it's also important to point out, you listed a few of these names with Vrabel, Flores, and Nagy. When I think about a guy like Matt Nagy, I think about him going to a place where the fan base has assumed that their franchise was cursed. And what did he do? He turned the franchise around immediately, won Coach of the Year, put the Chicago Bears at the top of the NFC North, albeit for a very short amount of time. You're going to want somebody in the New York Jets building, to your point, that has the ability to speak to these high-powered people like Woody Johnson. He's been in Kansas City. He's been around the Hunt family. He's been around Andy Reid, who's football royalty. I feel like that would be a guy that would make sense. A player's coach, somebody that's won previously, somebody that does have that luxury of having a pretty deep playbook, a unique look at the offensive side of the football, and that's where the Jets need to get better.
Plus, if I'm kind of hearing you correctly here, JJ, it seems like you're saying that they may not get like the hot candidate, or they're not going to be necessarily in contention for the hot candidate out there.
Yeah, I appreciate the reading between the lines there. I will say that the Jets believe that this is going to be a coveted job. They're going to say, hey, we have a lot of young talent. You're going to be able to come in and figure out who your quarterback's going to be. This is a reset. If you win here, you're going to be a king. All of those things. And all that stuff is certainly true. But if you're, let's say, Ben Johnson, for example, and you are the top name on the market, and are you going to choose between Chicago and the Jets? I think you're going to probably go to Chicago, right? If you have options, will the Jets actually be your top pick? And so because of that, will they get the top candidate? Not entirely sure. But does that mean that the top candidate should go there, would be the best fit? Also, maybe no. Do we think we ever get, this is kind of a little off topic, but do we ever get someone getting full head coach, GM control the way, and I always go back to like Mike Holmgren back in the day for the Seattle Seahawks. Like it used to be semi-common for a guy to, once he gets head coach, to also be GM if he had like an established name that was in demand enough. Do we ever see that coming back? I don't think so, and it's a great question. Belichick has actually talked about this a little bit, how the way the game is today, you have to have a general manager, whether you call that person the GM or not, because of just the analytics. You got the salary cap, you have all the ways that you can acquire personnel, how large these coaching staffs are, how needy so many of these players are, how less they're in the building today than they were when Mike Holmgren was doing his thing. It is so difficult for one coach, even if you're the GOAT or you know, you've done it for a long time. Andy Reid, Kyle, you know this, how often does he defer to Brett Veach? Does he ultimately have final veto power and say, of course, we all know and understand that, but he has a robust personnel department and an entrenched general manager there. And if anyone in the league could do it, it's Andy Reid, and Andy Reid's not doing it.
Yeah, to your point, JJ, Rick Burkholder, trainer for the Kansas City Chiefs, head trainer. He's the guy that got Terrell Owens back in the playoffs to have that run in Philadelphia. He's a guy that Andy trusts. Brett Veach obviously trusts him. Dave Tobe, a guy that he trusts. Andy Heck, a head coach type that's in the offensive line room. Steve Spagnuolo. Surround yourself with a bunch of these football mobsters. Make them do their jobs, but also lean on them in times of trials and tribulation. You're going to be in a good spot.
All right, let's end with this. Onside kick yesterday in the Detroit Lions Buffalo Bills game with well over 10 minutes remaining in this game. Down only 10 points, but obviously they had given up 38 already in that game, so they knew they had to score some points going forward. But with the new rules, it's far more anticlimactic because you have to declare, you have to point it out, and even if you get it, you can only try one more in the fourth quarter before you're forced to then kick it away because you're limited to only two in the entire game. So do we see the NFL and the competition committee revising this, reassessing this? Because I think every fan watched what happened there and said yesterday, this would have been way cooler if it was just a surprise onside kick. It would have been way more exciting to watch.
Yeah, so a few things here. First of all, we're absolutely going to see the onside kick coming back because right now you're at a recovery rate of 6.8%. Really curious decision by Dan Campbell to do what he did. With 12 minutes left, 3 timeouts, 4 clock stoppages, including the 2-minute warning, down 10 points. And also, if the thing that has a 94% chance of happening happens, like Mac Hollins recovering the kick and returning it a little bit, then you put yourself at a disadvantage. Very curious decision right there. But if you agreed with the decision, what I think we're ultimately going to see is the 5-yard run-up, where at least the kicking team is going to be able to get a little bit of a head start to potentially recover that kick. And we're going to see that move up to the 15, 18, 20% recovery rate range. Look, you're going to always have to declare it. Right, there's no more surprise onside kick because you line up the 10 dudes in the setup zone now. So that can't be an onside kick anymore. You're going to have to declare. There will be no more surprise. But this nonsense of, only in the fourth and you only get 2, do away with that. You're going to if you want to declare it in the first quarter, go ahead and do it. And if you want to have an 18% chance of getting it, you will. I think that those changes are going to take place in the offseason. I don't believe we're going to see a 4th and long alternative because that introduces DPI into the conversation, right? You need a 4th and 20 conversion. Just going to throw it up, let the wide receiver work through the corner and throw the flag, and now you get possession. That's not going to happen. The answer, Mike, to the onside kick problem is bringing back the old onside kick, and I think that's what ultimately is going to happen.
Mike, I tried to tell you, there's one of two things that Detroit Lions fans were going to be purchasing in the coming months. It's either tickets to the Super Bowl parade or pitchforks and torches. And last night was a pitchforks and torches night. In addition to that, when you kick an onside kick in that situation as the head coach of the Detroit Lions, you then go against everything, all that credit you've built up all year, talking about faith you have in the roster. That is a lack of faith decision. It speaks volumes about what's going on in that locker room.
I disagree. I kind of liked it. I thought your defense couldn't stop nosebleed. You've given up 38 points. 6%
Give them a chance to
low.
stop a nosebleed. You got a higher chance to stop them than you do the onside kick.
But
Mike.
you also don't have a lot of time. And that once you do that, you hope to hold them to a field goal, but they're already in field goal range, so they don't have to travel too far. From a time perspective, they kick a field goal there, then you're down 2 scores. You still have to get an onside kick at some point in time. But I do think they were not stopping the Bills and then didn't stop them after that. So I don't think it was as bad a decision as at first glance.
Yeah, it was a bad decision. Just going to strongly disagree with you there, but that's okay.
All right, thanks, JJ. Thanks for doing the program, as he does every single Monday. We'll be back after this doing a little overreaction versus reality. Coming up next. Overreaction versus reality. Coming out of week 15 here, are these storylines an overreaction to what we saw on the football field, or are they reality going forward? Zach Taylor, Mike McDaniel, the two 6-8 head coaches for the Bengals and Dolphins respectively, should be out after their disappointing 2024 seasons. Overreaction or reality?
I feel like the Zach Taylor situation is the most mind-boggling to me because of the amount of talent they have on the offensive side of the football. Because Louis Anarumo has showed us in years past that he has been a good coordinator, I feel like there's some sort of disconnect in the Cincinnati locker room. Obviously, it's not the same group defensively. That's okay. I understand that. I'll account that for maybe 4 points a game towards the bad. But when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals team, it's week in, week out. They are playing on a razor's edge. And when you go to the Miami Dolphins, playing against D'Amico Ryan's defense, you understand that they're going to try to bluff, they're going to try to disguise, and you still don't have a plan. Miami looked inept offensively. I understand they've got some injury issues there, but at the end of the day, Mike McDaniel, you're supposed to be the cure-all. You're supposed to be the antibiotic. When things are going wrong, this guy Mike McDaniel can get you out of a sticky situation. Take a look around the league, Mike. A lot of these coaches, offensive-minded coaches, find a way to get it done even when the chips are down. It seems as if the evergreen tweet with the Miami Dolphins is they just don't look like those other teams. It's hard for me to call for somebody's job, but somebody's got to go in Cincinnati. I'm not sure who it's going to be.
I think it's overreaction for McDaniel. There's just not going to be head coaches lining up to work with a quarterback who's one of the weakest arm quarterbacks in the NFL, and two, is one hit away from maybe never playing it down in the NFL again. So that, to me, overreaction.
Overreaction on McDaniel. The Taylor stuff is puzzling.
You can get the best coaching candidate in the NFL to come to Cincinnati. They will be lining up to work with Joe Burrow for the next decade because of the job security that brings, because of the ceiling of where that could push with a quarterback like that. And especially we've talked about Ben Johnson and who he is as an offensive mind and what he wants to be. Not a big market head coach if he does take a job. That's like synergy to a T, exactly what he would be looking for. You can do better than Zach Taylor. And not to say that it's all Zach Taylor's fault, but if you're Cincinnati, you can do better than Zach Taylor. I saw it as a Packers fan for the end of Aaron Rodgers' career with Mike McCarthy. When it's going south, trying to salvage it doesn't necessarily make it work. When you have a quarterback like that, you can get the top guy. Yeah, I think it's reality that he should be.
Frustrating.
Will he be?
It's frustrating as a football fan watching this Bengals team not be able to win football games. And at the end of the day, it falls on the head coach. And I talked about the coordinator, but at the end of the day, there's a reason you got head coach Zach Taylor on your placard on your desk, and it could not be for very much longer in Cincinnati.
Okay, next one. Vikings will be the number 1 seed in the NFC with the Lions faltering. The Eagles obviously winning, but being susceptible. Vikings will be the 1 seed. Overreaction or reality?
Overreaction. Overreaction, Mike.
I don't know. I think there's a good chance. Because I do think at this rate, they beat the Lions in week 18. So I think they go ahead of the Lions. And then Philadelphia Eagles don't have the easiest schedule going in. That Commanders game could be difficult. Yeah, I'm probably going to say it's overreaction, though.
I'm going to say overreaction. I mean, I think that the Lions still beat the Vikings. It comes down to who punts first in that football game. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're an absolute house right now, defensively and offensively.
That's who I would say would be the number one seed in the NFC. Last one here. The Washington Commanders will be a one and done come playoff time. Overreaction or reality?
I don't know. I haven't seen Jaden under the bright lights yet. I just, I'm very eagerly anticipating watching this young man play football in meaningful football. And it's been meaningful all year. But does he have another gear? And if so, I would say that's an overreaction.
I think it's unfortunately a reality because, one, I think they'll be the last wild card. And that obviously means you'll play either the Eagles, the Vikings, or the Lions, who are the 2 seed. Not an easy matchup. And 2, because it is a rookie and it's the playoffs and it does get difficult. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen for him at some point, but I do just think right now a little bit too early. So I'm going to say reality. They will be a one and done come playoff time. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get to your Kyle Long's strongest take from week 15. It's Kyle Long's strongest take of the week, the moment you've been waiting all show for. And I have too, because I don't know what he's going to come with. Kyle, what do you got for us this week?
Well, the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, I'm going to go back to 2021, playing in Cincinnati against Joe Burrow. We're trying to get Trey Hendrickson blocked. Orlando Brown Jr. goes down, our left tackle, who's no longer with Kansas City, and they kick out Joe Thuney to left tackle. And my God, if the music didn't just start playing, it was like the clouds separated, the sun came down on the protection. Joe Thuney was dominant. I think he's been the best left tackle on the Kansas City Chiefs since the day he walked into the building at Jihad Field, okay? And we saw him go in there and play left tackle for the Chiefs against the Browns. We've seen him fill in a number of times this season. He has been awesome. He's been what this offense is missing. And I think all the questions we have surrounding the Chiefs and their offense, a lot of it this season has been due to the fact that they have not had a serviceable left tackle. Joe Thuney should have moved to left tackle way earlier this season, maybe even opening day, to allow not only Joe to get more comfortable at the left tackle position, but to get guys like Caliendo dialed in at left guard. Maybe get Wanye Morris a ton more reps at the guard position for positional depth. That's a strong take that I have. No disrespect to anybody trying to play left tackle that's not named Joe Thuney in the Kansas City Chiefs building, but not everybody's created equally. Joe Thuney, one of those dudes.
Thuney was a left tackle in college. Now, that's common for tackles to move into guard when they have shorter arms, 32¼ inches. But he was awesome. Me. He was awesome at left tackle back at NC State back in 2015. I loved his tape there. And he's played 88 snaps throughout his career at left tackle. Obviously got thrown to the Wolves going up against Myles Garrett. Like a nice little hello, welcome to left tackle, face the most freakish edge rusher in modern NFL history. Good luck. But I agree. He provides some stability there, and now it's going to be difficult going forward. We've talked about their schedule and who they've got on tap with the Texans, the Broncos, the Steelers. Like, it ain't going to get it too much easier at that edge rushing position, but throwing Wanye Morris out there at this point, it ain't going to work. All right.
This could be the thing that saves it.
For our
Can't do anything else. We're running out of time.
Hope you enjoyed watching Pushing the Pile. Make sure to tune in Monday through Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Until next time, keep pushing.